Welcome to Sarpy Outlook. My name is Marta Nieves, and today we will be talking about immigration. Our guest is Emiliano Lerda. He is Executive Director of Justice for Our Neighbors and an attorney. He has been with Justice for Our Neighbors for about 2.5 years. Welcome, Emiliano.
Oh, hello, Marta. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Justice for Our Neighbors of Nebraska. We are a nonprofit organization based out of South Omaha. We provide immigration legal services, education, and advocacy for low-income immigrants. Our organization was started in 1999 by the United Methodist Committee on Relief, UMCOR. And the decision to start nonprofits that do immigration legal services was a response to a very restrictive law that was passed by Congress in 1996 and then implemented in 1997. And so we have been working ever since. We helped thousands of low-income immigrants navigate the very confusing and very complicated maze of immigration laws that makes it so complicated and virtually impossible to navigate sometimes without the help of an attorney.
That's good to know that you're there for so many people who it is very confusing. And I hear that the current patchwork of the policies and people use the term broken, so it's very difficult for people to actually find their way to becoming citizens.
Yes, I often hear people ask me, well, why don't they just stand in line? And I usually answer, what line? And that's something that is a real problem. So we have very few lines that are very narrowly defined. And so if you're lucky enough to have a line available to you, then the wait in those lines can exceed somebody's life expectancy in a lot of cases because the wait is so long. So the system is so complicated, and the fact that any immigration violation is an administrative violation is not a criminal violation. Oh. What that means is that somebody that committed or is charged with a civil administrative violation does not have the right to a free attorney. Oh. And because of this, there's a lot of people that go through the immigration legal system that are unrepresented. And just as an example, in 2011, more than 70% of those immigrants that were processed through the Omaha immigration courts were unrepresented. They didn't have legal representation. Now that creates a problem for the courts. It creates a problem for the immigrants themselves. So it's a system that is very complicated and very unforgiving as well, because the decision, if it is not a positive decision, it means the separation of families. It means somebody's deported, somebody's losing a father or a mother. So
it's really sad.
It is really sad. It is really sad, and I think that it's not congruent with the family values and strong, good neighbors values that you find often in the Midwest. I'm from Argentina originally, and well, let me just say that my own experience does not illustrate the hardships and challenges that most immigrants have to face.
See. And how was that?
I was very lucky. I was very lucky, and I have to be very clear about that, because I was afforded an opportunity to be a student here and so forth. I became a U.S. citizen in 2009. Now, it was a complicated process, but again, I was very lucky that I was able to have those opportunities. And often people may see me and think, well, if you did it, why can't they do it? And it's not fair. It's not true. The lines are not available for those that just have little education and have limited economic means, financial means to come to the country. And remember, we're a nation of immigrants.
Yes.
Our ancestors, or the ancestors of European descent, they're here, came here with the same dreams and the same hopes of providing a better future for their children and working hard to provide for the basic necessities of the family. That's what we see in our work. our success rate at Justice for Our Neighbor has been over 99%.
That's outstanding.
And the reason for that is because we usually are careful and taking cases of those that are truly vulnerable. We can't help everybody. That's one of the hardest things of our job, is that we can't help everybody that we see. But we hope that our help is meaningful, and the quality of services that we provide are excellent. So people that have a way to be here with status, we walk them through this very complicated maze of laws and legal patchwork, as you mentioned, to get them on the other side to have status and be able to drive and be able to work and provide for their families and be an active member of our society and our community. We all benefit from that.
Yes, and that's one of the myths, I think, that people think that immigrants do not make a contribution and that they're taking. But as I see it, and as you see in your work, they do make a tremendous financial and positive contribution in our communities.
That's right. Most of our clients pay taxes. People don't know that, but that is true. This is something that people do in order to have what we call good moral character. So that is something that you have to provide evidence that will support that you're a person of good moral character once you apply for permanent residency or citizenship, right? So most people don't know that. And by the way, I mean, people pay taxes when they're renting homes, when they're buying items at the store. So people pay taxes in many different ways.
I think that's something we all forget, right?
We forget, and I also think we benefit from the economic contributions that immigrants bring to our community. I have been impressed with the wide variety of organizations across the nation that are coming out in support of comprehensive immigration reform. Organizations that have been traditionally affiliated with more conservative groups, but they're coming out in support because they understand the economic significance of passing good comprehensive immigration reform and fixing our broken system. So everybody on the left, on the right, agrees that the system is broken and it's not working.
I think the National Chamber of Commerce, which is a business-oriented organization, definitely comes out for it.
Often, it's hard to explain the complexity of the immigration legal system. Okay?
Yes.
It's a system that a lot of people want to think about in terms of black and white. You know, somebody did the right thing or the wrong thing. Somebody decided to do the wrong thing, and the reality is that our system does not allow for people to make a choice between right and wrong. There is no choice for most people that, again, cannot fit in any of these lines. And even if there is a line for them, they have to wait, more than 20, 30 years. So this is something that is not benefiting us. Our broken immigration system is not making us stronger economically. It's not making us safer. It's not making us a nation of good neighborly individuals. So I think that fixing and passing comprehensive immigration reform is one way in which we can all work together for a stronger economy, for a safer nation. Our borders may be a problem, but just throwing money and trying to invest in border security without fixing the underlying problem of our immigration legal system is not smart. It's not strategic. There's a lot of waste in that strategy, in that approach.
Yes, better is to help the families become more integrated into our system, because after all, that's what we are, a nation of immigrants, and it just makes such a difference when we can be compassionate, and even like in our Constitution, when we take a look at how we treat immigrants. We need to, our new immigrants especially, we need to reflect our American values of families staying together, of working hard, of being good citizens. And that's what I see many, many immigrants who come to our shores for that purpose, to make their lives better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And think about the alternative, right? What is the alternative? Okay, deport a father or a mother and tear them apart, tear the family apart, how is that going to help our community here? How do we benefit from that?
No, not at all.
We don't benefit economically. We don't benefit culturally. It's a sad reality, and I see many families struggling through this issue. I still don't know, and I can't imagine what it is like to live every day with that fear, that uncertainty, that you may end up detained and eventually deported because you didn't stop for 3 seconds in a stop sign.
Yeah,
I have 2 children, Marta, and I love them. I mean, they changed my life, and I miss them when I travel for work. I cannot even imagine what it is like to kiss your kids goodbye in the morning, not knowing whether or not you may come back, or maybe you will end up being deported in Mexico or wherever your home country may be.
Yes, and you know, you mentioned Mexico, but you really see families from many different places, and you know, you might want to talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
About the diversity of individuals that you serve.
Immigration, I mean, we have had clients from Canada, we have clients from Africa, from Asia. That's right. We have seen immigrants from all over the world. People often associate the issue of immigration and make it a Latino issue, or an issue that it's affecting primarily the country of Mexico. And it is true. A lot of our clients are from Central and Latin America, but the face of immigrants, or who are immigrants in our country, they're from all over the world. We have a diverse group of people that we serve. People from Togo, from Burma. I mean, we do humanitarian-based immigration legal service for refugees or asylees, but we also do immigration legal services in cases of family reunification, so family-based immigration. We don't do a lot of employment-based immigration because that usually has a sponsor. There's an employer that can sponsor the individual, and they have the means usually to secure private attorneys. But we do primarily family-based and humanitarian-based immigration legal services.
But I know that there are other organizations that work on the employment piece as well. Now, you mentioned that, but aren't there different categories that the system looks at?
Right. I mean, when we're looking at lines, and people say, why don't they just get in line? So I do have a presentation where I usually share with folks about the immigration legal system, and you could narrow them down to 4 main lines, if you will. One is the family-based immigration line. The other one, that is for very specific, very narrowly defined familial relationships.
Would that be kind of like a spouse or
a spouse,
a mother or father?
Right. You can be either an immediate relative, or if not, and you're still within the close proximity of that family, very close family relationships, you may fall under other categories that is called preference categories. But if you are considered an immediate relative, is for spouse, children, and this is very narrowly defined. For example, brothers and sisters will not be considered immediate relatives.
Really?
That's right. You will fall under a different category, which that means that you have a long wait, and a very long wait. I'm talking about more than 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's very arbitrary. But anyway, so that's family-based immigration. Humanitarian-based is for refugees and asylees. Refugees come to the country with that status already as refugees. Asylees come to the country perhaps in a non-immigrant visa, like a student visa or visitor's visa, and then from within the country they ask for asylum, because if they go back home and they have certain specific affiliations, they may be killed. Now, that is also very narrowly defined. Not just anybody that will get killed if they get sent back will be protected by asylum. Okay, wow. So that's family-based, humanitarian-based. Those are 2 lines. The other line is for employment-based. What people don't realize is that seasonal employees or seasonal workers, they're not considered immigrants. Those are non-immigrant visas, temporary workers.
Oh, okay.
Those are non-immigrant visas. For immigrant employment-based immigration, You have to, it's usually somebody that's highly educated, master's, PhD, or somebody that has a lot of experience and can work as an executive in a corporation, okay?
Yes, I believe that's one of the points that has been put into the proposed immigration bill in the Senate.
That's right. A lot of
For
companies.
engineers and people
STEM.
in high profile.
A lot of corporations and organizations have been very active in asking for more employment-based immigration visa slots, if you will.
Do you know what I miss? It's so curious to me because we're willing to put that in, and yet, in the case of the Dreamers, we won't even in this state give a driver's license. And these young people are already growing up here, and this has been their only home, and we don't want to open up the possibilities for them when they can contribute so much.
You know, the issue about Dreamers is very interesting. So this is another interesting dynamic of what immigration is all about. Immigration is made up of federal laws, but sometimes you see the interaction between federal laws and state laws. In this case, the federal government is giving young people that qualify, that comply with certain requirements, they are beneficiaries of what is called deferred action for childhood arrivals. Now, if you do have DACA, we call it DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals, you have permission from the government to work, and you have permission to be in the country. However, you don't have officially, technically, lawful status, but you have permission to be here, okay, and to work. But it is state law, the laws that govern whether or not you can have a driver's license. So Nebraska is one of two states, Nebraska and Arizona are the only two states that decided not to provide driver's licenses to beneficiaries of DACA. And therefore, a lot of young people that do have the work authorization and they have the permission from federal government to be here cannot have a driver's license, which is
unfortunate.
Again, and even if you look at it from a selfish perspective, we don't benefit. I mean, as a community, even if we look at it from a selfish perspective or economic direct benefit perspective, we do not benefit from that. We would benefit if this person could go to work.
Yes.
So even if you don't want to think about it as a you want to help people, or I don't know, even if you don't have that big heart, right?
Right. And I think Americans have
reason.
Big heart.
There you go. So, but even if you don't, there's a good reason why you should support comprehensive immigration reform and why you should support people having a driver's license to go to work.
Well, I think economically it makes sense. These young people have been educated right here, and we're saying, okay, we can go to other countries and recruit people in these fields, and here we have these young people right here who are Americans for all purposes, because of their behavior and everything.
We're missing out. As a country, I think we're missing out on an opportunity. We invested in a lot of these folks that went to college or went to high school. We invested as a community, and this is the time and the opportunity for people to give back.
Yes, and they want to.
And they want to because they love this country. I mean, the people I work with, we appreciate, I am an immigrant, and I appreciate the opportunity of being in this country, and I feel so thankful. There's nothing I wouldn't do for this country.
Well, yeah, look at the young men and women that sign up and fight the wars.
That's right.
It's just, sometimes I think we're not being very logical about all this, and it gets very emotional.
I think you're right.
And I think, that we need to get a little more logical about it and take into consideration what we stand for in this country.
That's right.
Anything else that you want to share that is really important in terms of those categories? I sort of interrupted you as you were talking about that.
I mentioned the family-based category, immigration category, the humanitarian-based, employment-based, and then last there's a diversity-based visa, but that diversity lottery is a lottery system, and it's for countries that don't send a lot of immigrants to the United States. So you have to be very lucky. The point of those describing the 4 lines is that, as you can see, if you don't have the right familial relationship, or if you're not highly educated and are an experienced executive in a corporation, or if you're not lucky enough to win the visa lottery, or if you're not escaping persecution, if you are a low income, hardworking, honest person who wants to come here to provide a better future for their family, and have nothing but the best intentions, I mean, there's not a line for you. And
Yeah.
that's what the point I was trying to drive
Sad.
home is that, unfortunately, our system does not provide people for the opportunity to do the right thing. And that's I think, is the main point.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot to think about, isn't there? Any particular story that you want to share about a particular family or a person that you worked with that everything came out successfully?
Well, it's hard. You know, we see a lot of families, and it's hard to pick one, to be honest. But there is a story of a young girl who had serious medical illness, and she couldn't receive the attention or the help that she needed in Mexico. And even though she had a permanent resident father and a U.S. citizen stepmother, she still couldn't afford the time because her condition did not afford her the time to wait in line. And so she really had a difficult situation in adjusting her status from within the country. See, the problem is if you enter without inspection, once you're in the country, even if you have a way in which you can adjust your status to pursue permanent residency, if you enter without inspection, you cannot usually apply and adjust your status from within the country. You have to go out. And if you go out and you have been here for longer than a year, then you'll be subject to a 10-year bar, which means you'll have to be outweighed. And in her condition, she could not afford that time. And so our attorneys worked very, very hard to obtain what is called parole in place. And she was granted parole in place, and it was a difficult case.
Yes.
But her life depended on it. And I mean, 14-year-old, I mean, she had, you know, her future, you know, had, and I mean, the sweetest and the most amazing family. So I think people forget the real human stories or the faces of those that are just like you and me, and they want nothing but to do the right thing and to provide for their families. People forget about that.
Yeah, and it does impact human beings. I think that's the bottom line when you come right down to it. So I am so impressed with the work that you and your organization is doing. It makes a huge difference. You're like a lifeline for so many families.
Thank you. We couldn't do without the support of so many people, you know, from my staff to the board members to funders.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a
thank you for the
puzzlement. It's a
opportunity.
puzzlement. You know, I'm just sort of, that you've shared so much. It just really is overwhelming when I think about it. I hope that our audience really looks into this and begins to understand, and I'm hoping that they get in touch with you, that maybe they could provide some support as well, because you are really doing an excellent humanitarian labor of love.
Thank you.
And it's really my hope, personally, that we will find a common sense fix to this issue that puts our values first. I mean, to be an American is something very special, and we are a special country, and so I want to see us live up to that as we integrate these aspiring Americans, because that's really what they are. You know, I hope we really get this right.
Thank you, Martha, and I hope so too. And I hope that people, those that took the time to listen to this conversation, will take whatever it is that they learn, share with their friends and neighbors, and communicate with the elected officials. Tell them we need comprehensive immigration reform.
Yes, yes.
With a pathway to citizenship.
Absolutely. And you know,
to earn citizenship is not amnesty.
Yeah, I think even, you know, sometimes terminologies, words mean a lot. Pathway is one thing, but kind of a road to get there.
That's right.
I like to say a road.
I agree.
Because we can all get on a road to somewhere. And I'd like to see us be able to do that.
I agree. Thank you, Martha, for having me.
Oh,
it's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. A pleasure's mine.